Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another creative sim for the Disney save. Today we're going to be making a really interesting young household, which will be the Lost Boys from Peter Pan, and also including Peter and Tinkerbell. They're all going to live in the little treehouse lookout that I created in the previous speed build video. Make sure you check that out if you haven't seen it already. And let's get into today's characters. So throughout the video I'm obviously going to be making them kind of how they look as adults or older, and then aging them down, just because I like to see how children's sims age up and make sure that they would look okay when they do age up and kind of like fit the features that I feel like are on the given character. So you'll see a little bit of that back and forth, but most of them are going to be children, and then Peter and Tinkerbell will be teens. And the first one I've started with here is Cubby, who is going to be Cubby Bear. They're all kind of given the last name of the animal that they are based after. His aspiration is creative genius. He has the glutton trait. Cubby can be a little absent-minded and emotional. He's usually the nervous one of the bunch, dragging his feet on very intense adventures. He would prefer to relax at the lookout, go for a nice swim, or make treats by a campfire rather than brudge deep into the jungle for dangerous games. Next up after him we have Nibs Rabbit. He has the rambunctious scamp aspiration and he is an active sim. Nibs is a jackhammer of endless energy. He never stops talking or running around looking for something to do. Being bored is not his thing. He will always find something to preoccupy himself with, and he usually gets himself into trouble because of it. A quick sprint through the jungle or trying to swing from trees are always go-to activities for Nibs. The others can get quite annoyed with him sometimes due to his inability to sit still. His outfit is a little bit different looking than the ones that he would be wearing in the film, because we didn't have any full body suits that were like specifically made for kind of a rabbit, but luckily we did have that one hat. I think it's from Snowy Escape that's just like a giant rabbit hat, so it kind of ties the whole thing together, but otherwise I think his little costume there is more of like a calico cat, but we'll go with it. I think it still kind of works. And then we have the twins. They are both little raccoon twins, and the only names I could kind of find for them, and this is either a reference from one of the releases of the book or one of the versions of the tale being told, was Marmaduke and Binky. So those are their two names, with the last name being Raccoon. They are both completely identical sims. Normally when I make twins or triplets, I will do slight changes to them, even just a little bit in some of their facial features, like maybe slightly puffier cheeks or bigger eyes or different shapes. I'll change them a little bit because I find that even the most identical looking twins tend to just have certain things about them. When you look at them a certain way, you can tell that they're not quite perfectly identical, but these two are not that. They are completely identical. They are both social butterflies. They are both goofballs. No one really knows who is who at any given time. They often speak at the exact same time or finish each other's sentences flawlessly. They like to be active, preferring physical activity and lots of jokes and laughter. Nothing is too serious for these two, but if either brother is in danger, the other is never far behind. They're practically tied at the hip. Good luck when you play with those two, getting them to be able to tell who is who. It's going to be a little bit tough, but I think that's kind of the point. It's a little bit of a fun feature of the household. And then we have Toodles. Toodles Skunk. He is a mind and body, one of the newer aspirations. He loves the outdoors, and he is basically the opposite of Nibs in pretty much every single way. He is the youngest of the group, and he's also the most quiet. Some of the Lost Boys have never heard him say a single word, and he rarely needs to communicate, as Toodles will often trail behind whoever is leading games or activities with not much thought to anything. Peter swears he's heard him speak before, but for the most part, the boys tend to leave him be and let him silently tag along wherever Toodles seems interested. It's such a shame when it comes to making sims that, like, they're all children obviously, but I do kind of wish that we could play with some height here, because in the film he is very, very small and short, and he's probably leading a little bit more towards being a toddler, but because of the household and the way that this is structured, and there are no real adults to kind of take care of everybody, I don't even know if the game would let me put a toddler into the household, but I also just didn't think it would be a great idea. I don't think they would get cared for very well, so we did have to kind of make him into a full-blown child, which is fine, but it would be nice to kind of play with the height sliders a little bit so that you could tell that he's supposed to be a really, really little one. And then for the end of the Lost Boys aspect of the video, we have Slightly, last name Fox. His aspiration is playtime captain, and he is self-assured. Slightly is the leader of the Lost Boys whenever Peter isn't around. He's quick-witted, brave, and lots of fun to be around. He does not think of safety very often, preferring to have a go-with-the-flow mentality. He figures if he gets the boys into trouble, he'll figure a way out of it later. Again, with the height for this character, it would have been really nice to make him a little bit taller, because even though he actually is a child in the film, and they're all, I think, supposed to be like children of varying ages. He just has a slightly taller, lankier look to him, which I really tried to look at how he would be when he was an adult and make sure that that is kind of like translated into that form of his life. Then again, I don't really know how many people would actually age this household up, and the Disney save by default is set for like no aging, so you may never actually see what these characters like age up to be, but just in case anybody wants to play with them that way, I decided it was a good idea to make sure that they at least look a little bit like what they were supposed to. And then we have a character that I have been waiting so long to add to the save, one of my absolute favorites, Peter Pan. He is a teen sim, and that makes him by default look a bit older than the rest of the gang in ways that I don't really like, but we do need at least one older sim for the household, and of course it has to be him or Tinkerbell. Really, the clothing, some of like the features of his character, he just feels like he's a teen, but he's on like the very cusp of it, you know what I mean? Like he's maybe like 12, 13 years old. It's a shame that the teen sims look so much like young adults, but what can you do? It's kind of one of those things that we have to just kind of go with. He does get a really cool new aspiration that I haven't had a chance to use in the save so far called Live Fast, and his traits are childish and adventurous. Now, in this part of the video, when I very first created him, he is not in a cult, but it was because I kind of forgot. My patrons and I decided a long time ago that he would be a really great vampire. He is like a cool way to do another occult sim and have the vampire aspect be like his shadow. It also gives him the immortality aspect, a little bit of the flight aspect, and it's just kind of cool to have a vampire living in Sulani. Now, don't worry at all about like the sun killing him or hurting him, because when you download the save by default, he'll have all of the correct features unlocked to keep him alive and happy and well in Sulani. It's just kind of a fun nod to like his shadow side and the immortality aspect of his character, and less about like the actual vampire aspects of like that type of a sim. Peter is a complicated person. As the oldest of the Lost Boys, he is their fierce leader. Peter will always be there to save the day from any adventure gone wrong or help another Lost Boy carry out a complicated prank. He is brave to a fault and almost has no sense of safety. He and Tinkerbell will sometimes venture far out of Neverland to hear mothers tell bedtime stories to their children so he can bring new tales to his friends back home. He's quite the storyteller, both from that and his own adventures. Young girls that meet him are usually immediately infatuated by him, but Peter has no plans to grow up and no real interest in romance. He wishes to remain youthful and play games with his friends forever. He can be very bratty and has a temper. His emotions come and go like flashes of lightning, and you never really know which version of Peter you're going to get on any given day. He enjoys things like fishing, playing games, swimming, flying, listening to stories, exploration, and meeting new people. Before we get to our final characters today, Tinkerbell, I know some of you are probably going to be wondering, where is the Darling family and why they have not been included? One, they're not going to fit into this household. We are maxed out here with 8 Sims, so it was never a possibility to have them living together anyway, and I am going to be including them. Peter Pan is one of my all-time favorites. I just decided we obviously had to split the characters up by the households that they actually live in. So Wendy Darling and her family, her brothers, her parents, and Nana will end up living in a different world that we will create at a different point in time. Kind of makes sense, obviously, because they travel from one location to another, and it's kind of that cross-world idea. Lastly, we have Miss Tinkerbell. She is going to be a spellcaster just because we don't have fairies right now, but I am hopeful, like I mentioned in a previous video, that I think we will actually get fairies at some point, and I would of course go back and kind of fix all of my fairy characters. Now, I made her sister Periwinkle a long time ago for Mount Komorebi, so she's basically like a twin of Periwinkle. They have slightly different skin tones, and I do think their features are a little bit different, so she was, the base of her was her sister Periwinkle, and then I sort of modified her from there. Her aspiration is Master Maker, and she has the Maker and Jealous traits. Tinkerbell is a tinker fairy from Neverland. She's a master crafter and incredibly creative. She can take a pile of twigs and leaves and turn it into almost anything you can imagine. She's the ultimate problem solver, often getting her friends and the Lost Boys out of deep trouble. Her friendship with Peter runs deep, almost too deep, as she's a little bit obsessed with him and often becomes jealous of other girls in his presence. Tinkerbell isn't afraid to play mean-spirited pranks on girls she deems a threat. This includes some of the mermaids from the lagoon or Wendy Darling. Outside of her temper flares and possessiveness, she is a very kind and loyal friend. She enjoys things such as crafting, sewing, embroidery, knitting, woodworking, inventing, and collecting. Something to think about with Tinkerbell's character is she's almost like two different characters. She has this like jealous, possessive, really flirty, fun kind of personality in the Peter Pan films, and then she has all of her Tinkerbell movies where she's seen as more of like a kind-spirited, very, very good sim, good person. So I tried to balance the two personalities that are shown with her character, leaning a little bit more into her original rendition, just because she's living with that household of characters. And because I know this is also going to get brought up quite a bit, I do plan on making the rest of the fairies, the main ones from Pixie Hollow. I already made Periwinkle, like I mentioned. The other ones will sort of just like live here and there, is kind of the plan at the moment. Unless we do like a full-blown Pixie Hollow build, which I could very well do at some point. But I just wanted to mention that because so many people, especially like when I mentioned that we're going to start doing Peter Pan, wanted to know immediately, like, are we going to do the rest of the Tinkerbell fairies? And yes, I do want to do them. They're beautiful. They'll be so fun to make and create a sim. Again, I hope that we get fairies for real before I actually start to dive into some of those characters so I can really make them. But yeah, Tink will just be kind of more like a one-sided romance sort of deal. Really young, but it won't be her main focus either. She's got a lot of other hobbies and things that she's super good at. She's really well-rounded. And for her clothing and outfits, I had so much fun. I wanted to show you guys basically all of the stuff that I did for her. I don't usually include that for all of my sims and like go through all of the outfit choices, but she's a really, really fun sim to dress. And I gave her a lot of different options. Anything that looked really whimsical or kind of like it was made out of leaves, anything that looked like something that she herself could have crafted. And I did take a lot of inspiration from all of her different given movies and lots of outfits that she wears in the Tinkerbell franchise. So hopefully you guys like her and the rest of the Lost Boys. Let me know what you thought of them in the comment section down below. If you'd like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will talk to you all in the next one.